Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Bava Basra Daf Kuf Samach Aleph Bava Basra 161. Today's Daf Yomi is dedicated for Shemir for the Chayalim, Ratzah for the Shvuyim, Yeshua for Am Yisrael. In this Eis Tzara, the Daf Yomi discusses the position of Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, who says that since we're talking about what's called a get makusher, there's what's called a get pashut and a get makusher. A get here means a document. So the document can be written pashut, straight on a plain piece of parchment, or a get makusher is where it's folded over document. So Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba's position was that the Mishnah had said that there are two distinctions between a get makusher and a get pashut. That the Mishnah had said on 168 that the get makusher has three witnesses and the get pashut has two witnesses, and the other distinction is that the get pashut, the witnesses are signing mitocho, and the get kosher, they're signing me'achora, they're signing behind it. So in that context, Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba says, what does it mean that they're signing behind it? Rav Huna had said that they sign between each fold, whereas Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba said achorei aksav, on the back of the document. Ukeneged aksav mi bachutz. So Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba says they sign on the back of the document after the last line on the external side of it. So the Gemara says, but we have a concern with Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba's approach. Why aren't we concerned that on the inside, since there were no witnesses signed at the end of the document on the inside, why aren't we concerned that maybe the forger would add on words to the line on the inside? He'll add on whatever he wants. And then extra witnesses would sign on the external part. And so therefore, and he'll say, listen, I have a lot of witnesses, but the earlier witnesses don't matter. It's just the later witnesses. And the reason why I have the earlier witnesses was just to make a greater publicity to the matter. So why aren't we concerned about that? So it says Rav Chisda to Rami bar Chama, Rashbam says, Amarei mi sabras edem kisidron chasimi. No, why are you assuming, hold on. Why are you assuming that the witnesses are signing kisidron in the basically on the same manner parallel to the text on the back? Why are you assuming that that's how they're signing? That's not how they're signing. The witness is signed to sign it not parallel but perpendicular, meaning to say they start to write on the back opposite the last line, and then they write in a perpendicular manner their signatures corresponding to the text. So therefore, if you would cut off the last line, you wouldn't have the full witness's name, and therefore everybody would know it's a forgery. And so therefore, you wouldn't be able to just add on a line to that. So the Gemara says, but still, Leichosh. Hold on 1 second. So the Gemara says, "V'neichosh dilma misrami reusa b'shita achrona, v'gayez leilu shita achrona, v'gayez leilu Ruben b'adeu miskasher b'ben Yaakov." So we're talking about a person, a witness whose name was Ruben, the son of Yaakov. And so why? So the Gemara says, why don't we have to be concerned that maybe the forger will be unhappy with what's written in the last line? Since he'll be unhappy with what's written in the last line, he'll cut that away and he'll get rid of the word Ruben, but he'll still have Ben Yaakov. And so therefore, since he'll have Ben Yaakov, that's actually going to be a kosher witness. The Tanam, because we learned in the Mishnah and Gittin, Banish Ploni Aid, kosher, that if you just write this person is the son of this person, it's a kosher witness. Gemara says, no, that won't work in this case. Ruvain Bechad Dara, because it says Ruvain ben Bechad Dara, and Yaakov Eid Ilave, because it says on the bottom row Ruvain, and then underneath it says son, and then on the next row, moving upwards, it says Yaakov Eid, and so therefore, if you cut out the first line, you're missing Ruvain ben, and all you're left with is not Ben Yaakov, but you're just left with Yaakov is the witness. And that wouldn't be good. So Gemara says, why not? Just writing Yaakov is the witness should also be kosher. Why? The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Ish Ploni Aid, kosher, that if it says this person, let's say Avram or Yitzchak or Yaakov is the witness, that's kosher. So therefore, in this case, even if it just says Yaakov Eid, that should be enough. So we see that there should be a problem with the forgery. Gemara says no. Gemara gives two answers. First of all, the Loksiv Aid. He just wrote Ruvain ben Yaakov. You don't write witness to prevent this. And the second problem is that the second alternative answer is that by saying the cost of aid, but the Adina ba the Hachasimas Yada Lav the Yaakov. We know that this signature is not, that there's nobody named Yaakov, and so therefore this is not Yaakov. Rashbam gives an answer that sounds a little forced. It says, "Ein bazah malchus shum adam sheshmo Yaakov sheyachtov kach." There's nobody in this entire kingdom whose name is Jacob he would write it like this. So therefore, when they come to certify the signatures and see if they're true, they'll prove that this can't be the handwriting of Yaakov, and they won't make it kosher. So Gemara says, but wait, we give a different answer. V'delma b'shmei davua chasam. Maybe this person, Ruvain, just used signing his father's name. Rashbam writes that was the practice to sign things using the name to honor their father. Maybe that's what was going on here. Gemara says, no. Lo shavak inish shmei didei v'chasim b'shmei. Now, a person would not leave his own name and write and sign it using the name of his father. Gemara says, but still, Dilma Simana Ba'alma Hu Deshavia. Maybe he's not signing his father's name, he's just using his father's name as like his sign, as his signature. Not because that should be a signature, but rather this was the practice that a person would write certain letters as a sign of his name. Like, for example, as we're about to see, that the Rav Tzayer Kav, Rav used to draw a fish, and Rav Chanina Tzayer Charusa, Rav Chanina drew a palm tree, and Rav Chisda Samach, Rav Chisda made a Samach, and Rav Shai made an Ayin. Why did Rav make a fish? Now, so the Rashbam says, what's the fish? He says, maybe it's because basically Rav liked to eat fish. So therefore he drew a fish. So that's the reason. So Rabbi Baravuna says, Rabbi Baravuna did a makusa, he did a mast of a ship. So maybe that's why he drew Yaakov. That not because he was signing his father's name, but because that was the sign, the symbol that he was using. Gemara says, no, that wouldn't have happened. A person would not be so audacious, so chutzpahdik, as to use the name of his father as the siman, as the symbol for his name. Marzutra says, Marzutra gives a different answer to explain how we can make sure that there was no forgery. He doesn't have to come to this forced hukumta. He says, Marzutra says, according to Rabbi Yirmiyah and Barabba, he must be of the position that we'd have to say, Tol Makusher She'ein Adav Kol She'ein, excuse me, any get Makusher that the witnesses don't finish, She'ein Edav Kol B'Shita Achas, where the witnesses don't finish on one line, is going to be disqualified. So therefore, since all the witnesses will have to be on one line, you can't assume that they're going to just add more witnesses. Meaning to say, either when they start, all of them will sign opposite the last line. Hold on one second. Or they'll begin at the end and they'll end at the beginning. But what we see from here, if the witnesses will sign from below to above, either way, if they cut off the last line, they'll cut off all the tops of the signatures. Meaning to say that all the witnesses are signing on the same line, and so therefore you can't cut off one line because you'll mess up everything. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Yochanan, call Mechak and Kulan, all the erasures that happened in the contract. So he says, call Mechak and Kulan, Tzarech Sheyichtov, all of the erasers that you have in a contract and you don't have the ability, and they're not in the space where it says Sharir V'Kayam, Tzarech Sheyichtov V'Dein Kiyumehon. You need to write at the end of the contract, this is their certification. Meaning to say that you write at the end of the contract the places where there are erasers, and you say that this is the truth, because otherwise we have to be concerned that there was forgery. And the last line of the contract, you need to go over the content of the contract. You need to repeat in the last line what you said earlier. My time, and what's the reasoning? Because the witnesses, the reason is we don't want to learn anything new in the last line if it wasn't mentioned prior to that in the contract. What's the reason? Rashbam writes, the witnesses, they're maybe not going to be so skilled as to write their handwriting right next to the last line. So they'll leave a space between the contract and then sign their names. And so a person can forge and he could add in an extra line. And so therefore the Rabbanan instituted to go over the last line of the contract, to go over the contract in the last line. And so this way, even if they'll forge it, if they add something else, we'll see, oh no, this is a forgery. And so therefore in the last line, it's always never going to be anything new. So the Gemara says,